There's a clear explanation for why people often underrate you, interrupt you, prod your patience, and overstep your limits. It isn't that you lack strength, it's that you appear non-threatening. You reveal your intentions too soon. You wear your concern on your sleeve. You chase approval before you earn respect. In a world that rewards strategic hardness, being merely liked without inspiring any unease is equivalent to being overlooked. Kindness rarely commands awe. Mystery does. From childhood, you've been schooled to be agreeable, smile more, be accessible, lead with warmth. The trouble is that niceness rarely commands respect. When everything about you is visible, you become manageable. Predictability invites manipulation. That's the lesson the old realists taught. Comfort is not their aim. Caution, island. Consider how often you were dismissed until you removed yourself. Consider how frequently people returned only after you withdrew your availability. Consider how many only honored your boundaries once you enforced space between you. That's because you were operating on goodwill, while others were operating on leverage. They counted on your readiness to rationalize, to forgive, to remain, to apologize. First, you were the one who never escalated. Once someone realizes you won't push back, they will press harder and win. This isn't theoretical. It plays out in offices, friendships, families. People probe the emotionally reachable because your empathy becomes the ceiling of your response. But when you quietly become a potential problem, not explosive, just inscrutable, they hesitate. They second-guess their tone, choose their words more cautiously, and hold back the casual cruelties. Why? Because you might not bark, but you could bite. The mere prospect of an unknown reaction alters behavior. People measure control by whether they can provoke you. Can they make you flinch? Force you to explain? Chase validation? So long as you comply, they mark you safe. When you do not, they mark you dangerous. Dangerous here doesn't mean irrational, it means opaque. Once others can anticipate your feelings, they will build their world around those expectations, not yours. When you remove that predictability, they watch, wait, and often obey. For years you prioritized being cherished. Try now a different posture. Cultivate quiet consequence, not through threats or noise, but through calculated reserve, deliberate silence, and refusing to showcase your wounds on demand. A pleasant face can be forgotten. A presence that never needs to fill the room with words lingers. Power often rests on perception rather than capacity. You don't need to become violent or unkind. You need to be read as someone not to be trifled with. That perception is produced by limiting exposure. Slow your reactions, shorten your answers, control how much you reveal. Loud personalities spill everything: ambitions, fears, plans, emotional triggers, making it easy for opponents to plot around them. The strategist instead practices opacity. If others can predict you, they can replace you. If they can't, they prepare. So speak less, delay your responses, cloak your aims in ambiguity. Not to confuse for the sake of it, but to steer how people interpret you. In a culture obsessed with transparency, the person who remains hard to pin down becomes the center of attention, not because they demand it, but because others can't stop trying to decipher them. Resist the impulse to defend yourself. Defensiveness dissolves authority. When criticized, offering explanations confirms the critique has an effect. When accused of distance, just accept the label without contorting to justify yourself. Every defense signals emotional access. The most unsettling people are those who listen intently and give nothing back. A quiet nod, a neutral acknowledgement, a brief "noted." These are more disarming than a long rebuttal. People want a reaction. Withholding one forces them to recalibrate. You don't have to be cruel. You simply withdraw the currency of your emotional labor. Deliberately cultivate contradiction. Threats don't require loudness, they require unpredictability. Those who can oscillate between warmth and absence without explanation create a kind of emotional vertigo in others. Praise today, polite distance tomorrow. A friendly smile in conversation, followed by thoughtful silence later. Acts of generosity that are not followed by availability. These behaviors unsettle because they deny the safe template people rely on. The resulting unease nudges others toward caution rather than exploitation. Modern theorists call this mystery. Older thinkers called it a necessary artifice. Use inconsistency as a protective rhythm, not as a weapon of cruelty. Maintain composure while others unravel. There is tremendous intimidation in calmness during chaos. When gossip escalates, remain quiet. When voices rise, breathe slowly. When panic spreads, choose measured words. When insults land, smile faintly rather than matching heat. A steady demeanor signals an immovability that is itself a deterrent. If you cannot be rattled, you become difficult to move, and that possibility makes others wary. Reserve your verbal energy. The fewer words you expend, the more charged each one becomes. People will begin to edit themselves when they anticipate your influence before you speak. That is not conversation, it is command. The idea of becoming feared often triggers a caricature of brutality, but fear needn't be weaponized. Fear can be a respectful distance born of uncertainty. Someone who never reacts impulsively, who withdraws without drama, who refuses to race to explanations that person creates consequences simply through absence. When you stop responding, people reflect. When you reduce your words, they overinterpret. When you are not present, your vacancy becomes a mirror they can't ignore. Without your habitual validation, they lose the yardstick they use to measure themselves. That psychological shift is potent. You are no longer merely a resource. You become an event whose absence prompts reassessment. This shift begins in small habits. First, never be the immediate responder. When provoked, pause. Others sprint to reply in order to claim the last word. You do the opposite. The pause is not indecision, it is deliberation. By allowing their energy to meet your stillness, you reverse the power dynamic. Those who react instantly are often perceived as weaker. Those who delay force everyone else's anticipation. The calculated silence is more menacing than a sharp retort. Second, change your cadence. Speak deliberately with fewer words and leave earlier than expected. Slower speech signals control. Brevity signals value. Walking away early sustains mystery. Many people ramble to be comprehended. Power prefers to be interpreted. Let your few sentences carry weight. Let your exits be noticed. When others wonder whether you were agreeing, warning, or indifferent, you've already shifted the conversation from your clarity to their speculation. Third, practice controlled withdrawal. Dominant people are scarce on purpose. The dog is always present. The wolf appears, surveys, and vanishes. When you withdraw from certain social arenas, group chats, prolonged debates, even routine meetups, you make your presence rare and therefore significant. People start asking where you went. Scarcity teaches others to value what they risk losing. Fourth, avoid over-justification. Saying no once should be final. Changing your mind doesn't require explanation. Leaving is a statement in itself. Don't habitually reopen the case. Every justification is a crack in the armor of autonomy. The fewer you offer, the more intact your authority remains. Practically, you can rehearse these disciplines daily. Track your reflex to answer immediately and delay it. Trim your habitual explanations. Monitor how often you stay later than necessary. When someone presses you, note the temptation to prove yourself, then resist. These small acts accumulate into a different presence, compact, deliberate. and quietly consequential. There's also an ethical line to hold. This isn't a program of manipulation for its own sake. It's a strategy of self-preservation and dignity. People who exploit kindness deserve containment, not cruelty. Your aim is not to become callous, but to protect your capacity so you can show kindness selectively and on terms that don't invite takeover. The person who masters this balance is neither a tyrant nor a martyr. They are an actor in their own interest, refusing the roles handed to them by the opportunistic. Remember, the most memorable people are often those who left you with questions, not answers. When you exit without a theatrical statement, people replay your silence and invent meanings you never offered. That cognitive loop is where influence grows. You don't need to shout to dominate a space. You need to calibrate presence, posture, and restraint. Let people reveal themselves while you remain measured. Let them over-explain while you reserve judgment. Let them test, and then let your absence teach them the cost of taking you for granted. Finally, accept that this transformation will feel unfamiliar at first. You have practiced accessibility for years. Now practice strategic reserve. Start small, be consistent, and keep the motive clear. To craft a life where your worth isn't at the mercy of someone else's demands. The wolf's power isn't in noise, it's in the quiet that forces others to pay attention. Be watchful, be scarce, and let your silence do the work that endless explanation never could. Don't wrap your boundaries in drama. Refusing to justify your limits preserves authority. Once you begin to rationalize, you move from ruling the room to bargaining in it. Explanation is the currency of negotiation, and negotiation is what a deterrent never enters. Keep your emotions neutral in the public theater. That neutrality is your armor. People will poke at your composure constantly. They'll make sharp comments to see if you'll correct them. Turn your silence into a punchline to bait a reaction, flirt or guilt trip to force emotion from you. They want to prove you're ordinary, readable, controllable. Resist. Their attempts to unmask you only confirm the potency of your reserve. When others can't decode you, they hesitate. Unreadability breeds reluctance. Predictability invites manipulation. Let them presume your strength rather than expose your method. Smile, watch, and withdraw when necessary. The more they strain to understand you, the more influence you quietly accumulate. The strategist does not merely perform strength, he rehearses restraint. Everyday rituals of self-control, measured gestures, minimal reveals. A posture that implies capability without display speak louder than any threat. Communicate the possibility of consequence without ever announcing it. That is the subtle art of deterrence. There's a delicate edge between enigmatic and irrelevant. Silence that compels attention differs from silence that evaporates into the background. Your objective is to be noticed for not needing to be heard, not for fading away. Make your quiet carry weight rather than become background noise. Fear without esteem births resentment. Admiration without edge breeds entitlement. If people only fear you, they'll comply outwardly while plotting privately. If they only adore you, they'll feel licensed to take. The true power blends both. A respect that's tinged with uncertainty, a reverence that acknowledges you could remove their comfort and yet chooses not to. Cultivate a low, constant tension in your presence, not theatrical drama, but a subtle signal that you are kind on your terms. Calm but uncompromisable, approachable but not exploitable, observant but not always affable. That tension keeps others emotionally alert in a way that protects you from casual incursions. Be deliberately inconsistent in warmth, consistent in control, sometimes friendly, sometimes distant, sometimes amused, sometimes unreadable. Never offer anger as a tool, and never be perpetually available. That oscillation prevents others from building a reliable map of your reactions, which in turn keeps them cautious. When you speak, make it decisive. A single precise sentence that ends a debate carries more force than a tirade of justifications. Offer surgical remarks, then exit the field. Let silence do the work where verbosity would only dilute your standing. A short, well-placed line reverberates longer than an apology or an explanation. Withdrawn is a strategic instrument. Leave conversations, chats, or rooms before your presence becomes mundane. Scarcity elevates value. Constant presence invites entropy. Make your exits matter by not turning them into performances. No statements, no dramatic goodbyes, simply vanish and let the absence register. Accept praise without clinging to it. Receive compliments with calm acknowledgement, a nod, steady eye contact, a brief, almost imperceptible smile, and move on. Not needing their approval signals self-sufficiency and reframes their praise as optional courtesy rather than lifeline. Do not over-explain your choices. A firm no requires no appendix. A changed mind does not require a lecture. When you habitually justify, you hand others an entry point. Preserve your autonomy by keeping reasons private. Let actions stand on their own. Encourage projection rather than correction. Let others speculate about you. Allow them to stitch together narratives that explain what they cannot see. Their imagination becomes the amplifier of your mystique. Do not correct the stories. The confusion fuels obsession and presence. End interactions a hair before the expected conclusion. Provide incomplete closure so they return mentally to what you left undone. That lingering incompleteness binds attention. People replay the moments you left ambiguous, which grants you a staying power ordinary people lack. Treat your inner life like a guarded citadel. Give hints, never headlines. When asked about your motives, remain concise. I'm focused. I'm calibrating. I'll decide later. Those phrases keep your interior inaccessible and reduce the likelihood of others engineering around your real intentions. Practice the discipline of delayed response. Train yourself to avoid instantaneous replies that reveal your thresholds. The person who responds seconds after provocation is read as weaker than the one who lets time do the work. Let the pause be read as calculation, not confusion. This method is not cynicism for its own sake, it's dignity preserved. You're not being cruel to teach a lesson, you're allocating your care where it cannot be exploited. Pair selectivity with integrity. Be generous on terms that protect you. That balance transforms kindness into strength, not fodder. Ultimately, your aim is to transition from being managed to being measured. When people cannot fully catalog you, they stop trying to manipulate you and start allowing space for your agency. Unpredictability is a form of untouchability. It makes you harder to corner and easier to remember. Begin small and be relentless. Reduce needless explanations, cultivate a few habits of withdrawal, and sharpen your speech. Over time, these tiny recalibrations will convert social availability into strategic presence. You will not need to shout to be noticed. Your silence will make others listen.